In the heart of an isolated forest in California, there is a place where the silence feels denser than in any other corner of the world. The entrance is guarded by armed security and tall natural walls of ancient trees. There, in the height of summer, private helicopters fly overhead and luxury cars vanish down unmarked roads. There are no public records, no media coverage. Only a name whispered among the most attentive, Bohemian Grove. The guest list includes former presidents, multinational CEOs, royalty, artists, and bankers. To the world, they are just informal gatherings. To those who dig deeper, they are meetings where the veil of reality seems to tear completely. With ancient symbols, nighttime ceremonies, and theatrical structures that hark back to pagan cults, these annual gatherings defy simple explanations. What begins as a social event among elites soon transforms into a spectacle shrouded in fire, shadows, and dark rituals. Hidden cameras have captured images that should never have existed, revealing a reality more like a nightmare disguised as tradition. But if there's anything these meetings conceal better than their participants, it's the true purpose behind it all. What really happens when the most powerful people on the planet gather far from the eyes of the world. Welcome to another night where mysteries never sleep. I am Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Before we begin, I'd like to ask for your help. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's just one click, but it makes a huge difference for YouTube to deliver these videos to more people, and for me to keep bringing this content to you. I'm counting on you. Let's get into the video. There is a place in the United States that rarely appears in the news, but every year it hosts figures who shape the destiny of the planet. Its name isn't etched in glass facades or engraved on golden plaques. But if you search carefully, you'll find it whispered among old pages and hidden videos in the depths of the internet. Bohemian Grove. The first thing that impresses is the location. Nestled among the redwoods of Northern California, the Grove doesn't look like a center of power until you discover who gathers there. For 2 weeks in July, private helicopters slice through the skies over Monte Rio. Cars with tinted windows disappear on nameless roads. There is no publicity, no interviews. But inside, presidents, tycoons, generals, and leaders of institutions, unknown to most, yet controlling billions, gather. They aren't there to negotiate treaties or debate laws. They're there for something no outsider can clearly explain. And maybe that's exactly what makes the Grove so frightening. Unlike Davos or Bilderberg, which at least publish agendas and behind-the-scenes photos, Bohemian Grove operates in complete silence. There are no official records, no statements. Inside, time flows differently. What happens among those trees is never brought to light. And when someone tries to find out, they encounter invisible walls more impenetrable than any military facility. Have you ever wondered why a simple summer camp would require so much secrecy? The official justification is that the gathering allows the powerful to relax, away from the burden of public roles. But reports, even the most cautious ones, reveal something deeper. Symbolic ceremonies, bonfires lit at dusk, performances in ceremonial robes, all of it before a giant statue of an owl. The most well-known ritual has a name: Cremation of Care. Officially, it's just a theatrical performance. But why repeat the same play every year with so many elements linked to ancient occultism? In 2000, Alex Jones managed to film footage inside the Grove. The video circulated the internet as a fragment of something much larger and much older. Hooded men, simulated screams, and what appeared to be a human figure being burned in sacrifice. Since then, security has drastically increased. Drones are intercepted. Journalists can't get within 5 kilometers of the entrance. If everything is merely symbolic, why such fear of being seen? Bohemian Grove has existed since 1872. It was founded by artists and writers, but quickly became a haven for bankers and politicians. Over time, it came to function as a sort of private club, with internal rules, guest lists, and an absolute code of silence. Membership requires not just influence, but also discretion. You don't enter the Grove, you must be chosen. This raises an inevitable question: what is gained inside that cannot be obtained outside? Participants are divided into camps with peculiar names: Mandalay, Hillbillies, Caveman. Each brings together members with similar profiles. Politicians in one, businessmen in another, military officers in another. At night, they gather in large, improvised assemblies. They speak, perform, drink, laugh. But no outsider knows the content of those conversations. There are no minutes, no recordings. And yet, in the months following the meetings, subtle changes begin to take place on the global stage. Coincidence? The Manhattan Project, which led to the atomic bomb, is said to have been first discussed among Grove members before the US government even formalized the plan. Other meetings there preceded financial and military decisions that altered the course of entire countries. And still, nothing is officially said. The events are treated as leisure. But who are the men making decisions while performing plays by firelight? Even those who have worked on-site avoid talking. Some former employees, under anonymity, reported unusual behaviors, with public figures acting completely differently than they do in public. They speak of a sense of total freedom among participants. And perhaps that is the Grove's most important secret. There, no one has to pretend. And when the mask falls, what is truly revealed? The entire event structure is temporary, but meticulously organized. Industrial kitchens, private security, medical tents, internal transportation. A true self-sufficient microcosm, created to function for a few days, and then vanish. Nothing remains. Nothing is left behind. What happens when a place is built to be forgotten? Bohemian Grove doesn't advertise itself as a political organization or a spiritual entity, but it operates in both realms with unsettling precision. And perhaps that's why it's so difficult to explain what it really is. A club? A theater? A cult? The answers always slip through the trees. But one thing is certain. There, power is not debated. It is celebrated. While the world sleeps, the ones moving the pieces have already gathered. The grove remains closed. The ritual has already begun. What draws the most attention to those investigating Bohemian Grove is not just the presence of the powerful, but the type of activity that takes place inside. Since the earliest accounts, there has been a specific tradition repeated every year, a nighttime ceremony called the Cremation of Care. It takes place in front of a massive owl sculpture, illuminated by torches, accompanied by ceremonial music and enigmatic speeches. Officially, it is a theatrical performance, but the aesthetics, symbolism, and ceremonial tone suggest something that goes beyond art. The owl figure is not there by chance. It represents wisdom, yes, but also silent vigilance and hidden presence. To some scholars of symbolism, it may be a modern representation of ancient gods such as Moloch or Minerva, depending on the line of interpretation. Moloch, specifically, is associated with ancient cults that perform sacrifices to ensure prosperity. It's an unsettling connection. And when these symbols are used by world leaders in a completely isolated setting, the question is no longer whether it has meaning, but rather what that meaning is. During the ritual, participants wear long robes and walk in procession, chanting songs that resemble religious litanies. At the center of the ceremony, a symbolic figure representing the cares of the world is placed in a coffin and cast into the flames. It is said that the goal is to free those present from the emotional burden they carry in their positions of power. But is this a symbolic gesture, or a kind of invocation disguised as performance? Since the footage recorded by Alex Jones was made public, many have begun to study the elements present in this ritual. The performance, the heavy music, the solemn speeches, all suggest a defined ritualistic structure, not merely an artistic improvisation. Some occult scholars point to parallels between the cremation of care and purification rituals practiced in secret societies. The choreography of the steps, the use of fire, the dramatization of symbolic death, these are ancient codes, repeated through the centuries. The theatricality of the grove is what allows everything to be easily denied. If someone asks, the answer is ready. It's just art. But when art becomes routine, and routine takes root in symbols that span civilizations, it's no longer merely representation. It's conscious repetition. Why repeat, year after year, the same gestures, the same words, the same symbols? The stage of the ritual is a permanent structure, sculpted with attention to detail. There are coordinated soundtracks, strategically placed lights, and a script that never changes. Participants report that the ceremony is moving and liberating. But moving for whom? And liberating from what? These elements are not answered. They are felt, say those who have been there. But what is felt in a ritual that simulates the burning of a human figure? Curiously, this ritual theater takes place at the beginning of the gatherings, as if officially opening the event. After that, the activities disperse. There are comedic plays, dinners, thematic discussions. But everything begins with fire, chants, and a symbolic farewell to empathy. The act of burning care, concern, raises another uncomfortable question. What becomes possible when the most powerful in the world choose to abandon, even symbolically, any sense of guilt or responsibility? Some see the ritual as a catharsis, a relief. But others see the opposite, a ritual of transformation. The one who enters carrying the weight of the world emerges reborn, or reconfigured, into a colder, more strategic role. Could that be the true function of the grove? To redefine those who shape the world, far from common moral judgment? The ritualistic theatricality does not end with the cremation of care. There are satirical plays and performances during the event, where powerful men dress as women, create characters, perform surreal stories. Some researchers say this serves a psychological function, breaking hierarchies and exposing vulnerabilities. But there is a second interpretation. These performances may be part of an initiatory tradition, where ego and identity are broken, and a new persona is assumed. A mask put on to let another one fall. In all ancient esoteric traditions, theater had an important role, not just as artistic expression, but as a tool for transmitting secret knowledge. Tragedy, comedy, and rite were interconnected. And when this theater is performed away from the world's eyes, among men who govern nations, it ceases to be entertainment. It becomes doctrine. There are no documents confirming these interpretations. And that is precisely what keeps the mystery alive. What is staged at Bohemian Grove may seem harmless, until one observes what happens behind the scenes of the world in the months following each gathering. The theater ends, the curtains fall, but the decisions continue to manifest, silent and powerful. When people think of symbols, most imagine logos, flags, or religious icons. But there is a much older and quieter layer operating in the world of the powerful. A symbolic language that has survived the fall of empires, the persecution of religions, and the destruction of entire cultures. At Bohemian Grove, these symbols do not appear by chance. They are part of the setting, the structure, and most of all, the rituals. And those who look closely will notice, everything there speaks, even when no one says a word. The dominant presence of the owl at the center of the ceremonies would already be enough to raise suspicion. But the issue isn't merely aesthetic. The owl, in ancient traditions, represents the figure that sees in the dark. In the ancient world, it was associated with gods who could see what ordinary men could not, the hidden, the invisible. In some esoteric circles, it symbolizes reserved knowledge, that which can only be transmitted to those who are ready. So why, then, does such a heavily loaded figure stand as the symbolic centerpiece of a gathering that no outsider may enter? The name most often associated with the owl in the grove's context is Moloch, a deity mentioned in biblical texts and Phoenician records, always linked to fire rituals and sacrifice. The connection between the statue and Moloch has never been confirmed by the organizers, but the resemblance to ancient idols and the presence of ritual fire in the Cremation of Care ceremony fuel this association. And if it isn't Moloch, why use a symbol so similar to that of a pagan god known for extreme rites? But the owl is only the beginning. The very layout of Bohemian Grove carries traces of sacred geometries. There are records suggesting that the trails and internal spaces follow a pattern similar to that of Stonehenge's crop formations, with meeting points that align with ancient ceremonial structures in Europe. Coincidence? Or an intentional mirroring of locations where, historically, power and the sacred were inseparable? The rituals performed there are filled with archetypes. Purifying fire, symbolic death, rebirth. All of it appears in initiatory societies from ancient Egypt to the secret orders of the 20th century. The question is not whether the Grove's attendees know this symbolism, but rather to what extent they use it consciously. Are they merely reproducing ancient traditions out of aesthetic curiosity, or are these symbols being used as a coded language among them? Symbols have power, not because they are magical, but because they shape how we think. An emblem placed at the center of a ritual isn't there for decoration. It directs the intention. And when global leaders gather before these idols, repeating ancient gestures with almost religious precision, what exactly is being reinforced? What kind of idea is being planted in the shadows? Symbolism researchers claim that the repeated use of these icons creates a sort of psychological field, where everyone present operates under the same archetypes. This generates cohesion, belonging, and invisible identity. And perhaps this is the strongest bond formed among Grove members, not just a political or financial pact, but a symbolic one. In this context, the symbol acts as a seal, Curiously, many of the symbols used there also appear in powerful institutions around the world: banks, universities, international organizations. The pyramid, the all-seeing eye, the compass, the torch. These are recurring marks. Are we surrounded by a language we do not understand? And what if that language was designed precisely to go unnoticed? Another rarely discussed detail is the ritual theatricality of the participants. They act, sing, play roles, but amid all of this, the symbols remain fixed. They do not change, they do not leave the stage. This reinforces the idea that the performance is transient, but the message is permanent. The participants may come and go. The symbols do not. They are the true center of the stage. The use of pagan idols in a setting where geopolitical decisions are, at the very least, influenced, raises a disconcerting question. What happens when secular power bows, even symbolically, before the ancient sacred? Are we witnessing a revival of forgotten traditions, or the continuation of something that never disappeared? It's possible that the participants themselves are unaware of the symbolic depth they are activating, but that doesn't make the rituals any less effective. On the contrary, unconscious rituals, repeated without question, are the most dangerous, because they don't need to be understood to work. And that is where Bohemian Grove becomes something far beyond a summer club. The symbols are there, year after year, carved in stone, raised on stages, chanted in verses. And even if no one officially talks about them, they keep operating, silent but active. If there is a secret language in the world, perhaps it is not spoken. Perhaps it is only shown. Few images from Bohemian Grove have caused as much impact as those recorded in 2000, where hooded figures move in procession before a colossal statue. At the center of the ritual, a human figure, apparently symbolic, is placed on a pyre and burned while voices chant ancient songs. The ceremony is known as the Cremation of Care, and although it is officially just a theatrical representation of the release of worldly concerns, the enactment has too many layers to be ignored. The first of these lies in the very symbolism of fire. Since the earliest civilizations, fire has been used as a means of communication with the divine, an instrument of purification and, in many cases, of offering. Fire rituals have been documented in cultures that practiced real sacrifices. And when that language is revived at a gathering of the most influential leaders on the planet, it becomes inevitable to ask, why choose this specific type of narrative? The second layer lies in the presence of the human effigy. It is called dull care and represents, according to the organizers, the burden of responsibility and worry. But what does it mean in practice to simulate the sacrifice of a human being before a symbolic entity? Why not perform something more abstract or lighthearted? Why turn the ritual into something that visually evokes ancient practices involving real lives? This type of performance carries a deep symbolic charge. Even though everyone involved knows the effigy is not real, the act of burning it before a giant idol and under ritualistic chanting activates universal archetypes. Carl Jung once said, "Symbols activate unconscious zones of the human mind." What might be activated in the mind of a world leader by participating in such a ritual? There are lines of research suggesting an initiatory function in these rituals. Simulating the death of something or someone is a traditional device in rites of passage. The idea of burning care may, in theory, serve to help participants leave behind guilt, doubt, and empathy. But what happens to a powerful mind when it is symbolically encouraged to abandon those human qualities? The ritual is so elaborate that it includes theatrical lighting, a solemn voiceover, specially composed soundtracks, and even special effects. All of it designed to create an atmosphere of reverence. This is not improvisation. This is production, and production requires intent. Why invest so much effort in a symbolic act if it didn't hold some kind of real power for those present? The most unsettling question doesn't lie in the effigy itself, but in the repetition. The same ritual has taken place for decades, always with the same elements. Once can be art, twice a tradition, but decades in a row. What must be continuously reinforced in order to keep functioning? And what happens if someone chooses not to participate? Former employees who worked in logistical support report that participants show deep respect for the moment. There is no laughter, no jokes. The ceremony is observed in silence. Some describe it as deeply moving. Others say it is the most serious point of the entire gathering. If it's just theater, why the reverent tone? And if it's not just theater, what exactly is it? To this day, There is no clear explanation for the choice of a human figure as the ritual's focus, nor for why fire is the final element. In many occult traditions, fire is seen as the last step of an invocation. It transforms matter into energy, and in that context, even a dummy may become symbolic enough to represent something far greater than it appears. Some theorists claim the ritual works as a seal, a way to reinforce cohesion among members. After all, those who participate in such an event share a secret, a unique experience. This creates bonds stronger than any signature on paper. But it also raises a serious question. What kind of pact is being sealed with fire? The difficulty in finding concrete answers is what keeps this mystery alive for more than a century. No participant has ever spoken openly about what they feel or understand from the ceremony. No official video has ever been released. Only leaked fragments, hushed testimonies, and the persistent sensation that the world is witnessing something without knowing exactly what. Meanwhile, the ritual flame continues to burn year after year. And before it, those who govern the world keep enacting the symbolic destruction of empathy. If this is just a metaphor, it's a dangerous one. And if it's not, then what exactly is being burned there? By now, it's clear that Bohemian Grove is not merely a retreat for relaxation. What truly intrigues is the type of people who attend, and what they do shortly after leaving. Many of those who frequent the camp are directly tied to decisions that move trillions, shape global policies, and determine the fate of entire nations. And most curious of all, some of these decisions seem to have been anticipated or quietly aligned shortly after these so-called informal gatherings. There are no minutes, no official statements. But patterns begin to emerge when you observe the timeline. In 1967, shortly after a particularly restricted meeting at the Grove, Richard Nixon received discreet internal support from key military and financial figures. Months later, he was in the White House. Years earlier, in 1942, the Manhattan Project, which would develop the first atomic bomb, was mentioned in conversations among club members. Coincidence? Or part of a pattern where discussions beneath the trees echo through the halls of power? The guests at the Grove are not there just for status. They represent entire sectors: oil, defense, technology, media, education, central banking. Meeting far from public eyes, they exchange ideas, align strategies, and most importantly, form alliances. In this kind of environment, informality does not mean insignificance. Quite the opposite. Away from public pressure, decisions can be made faster, with less resistance and much more discretion. Independent researchers who have followed Grove activities for decades claim that many corporate pacts are born there. Mergers of major corporations, political party alignments, international action plans. And all of this without the need for a pen or a contract. Just a conversation, a handshake, a toast around the fire. How many public policies are born from such a gesture? The absence of official records makes it impossible to confirm these arrangements. But the repetition of events and their subsequent outcomes leaves traces. In years when meetings are more restricted, sensitive topics such as wars, financial crises, or decisive elections seem to receive silent treatment. Not long after, the headlines appear, as if the decisions were already made before the public debate even began. Who is really choosing the direction of global politics? Grove gatherings also coincide with the rise of figures who, until then, were unknown to the general public. Names that suddenly appear with strong political and financial backing, often without a clear explanation. As if there were an invisible selection, a subtle push, decided far from the campaign stages and very close to the ancient trees of California. Is the Grove grooming leaders before they even become candidates? The influence of the club goes beyond politics. Executives from the pharmaceutical, tech, and media industries are also frequent members. Control over the global narrative, data manipulation, investment direction, all of it can be facilitated by a simple gathering of peers. There's no need for persuasion. Everyone already speaks the same language. And that, to an outside observer, is more dangerous than any formal conspiracy. A frequently overlooked detail is that Bohemian Grove shares many of its members with other equally exclusive groups, such as the Bilderberg Club, the Trilateral Commission, and certain branches of Skull and Bones. It's as if there were an elite connected by different tentacles, each with its own function, yet all feeding the same body. Could the Grove be the space where those tentacles meet? There are no elections at the Grove. No cameras, no witnesses. and yet, decisions with global impact seem to emerge from it. And what does that say about the state of democracy? Are we electing leaders or merely ratifying names already chosen in closed circles, far from any popular control? Some researchers suggest that true power no longer lies in public institutions, but in informal networks of influence, networks like the one formed within the Grove. There, conversation is direct, bonds are deep, and interests are shared. The world seems to spin beneath a chess game where the pieces are already in place before the public even realizes the game has begun. None of this is documented. No confessions, no clear trail. And it is precisely this lack of proof that keeps the Grove so effective. Because while everyone watches the political stages and the next day's newspapers, the real moves are made far from the spotlight. Those watching the game from the board may never understand who created it. And so, as leaders rise, crises are avoided or provoked, and decisions affecting billions are made. Bohemian Grove remains silent, invisible, untouched, but perhaps more present than ever. If you've followed everything up to this point, you've already realized Bohemian Grove is far more than just a social gathering of influential people. And if there's one thing time has taught me, it's that wherever power is concentrated, there's more than just interests, there are beliefs. And maybe it's time to ask the question that almost no one dares to speak aloud. Are we facing a club or a modern cult with its own rules, ancient rituals, and a faith that cannot be named? Think about it. What defines a cult? Secrecy, symbols, and rituals. The Grove has all of that, and more. It has the silent devotion of men who already have everything, yet keep coming back, year after year, as if needing to reaffirm something invisible. There are no written dogmas, no idols on the walls, but there is fire, there is silence, and there is a giant owl statue before which what appears to be a symbolic sacrifice is enacted repeatedly. Still think this is just a friendly gathering? Everything there is about belonging, about being part of something above the ordinary. Those who enter know, you don't speak of what you saw, you don't break the code. Those who step out of line don't return, not because someone threatens them, but because the social structure that sustains this circle simply shuts them out. It's an invisible pact, and those are always the hardest to break. Now notice something. Many of those who attend declare themselves religious, present themselves publicly as defenders of morality, ethics, and transparency. But when July comes, they disappear, retreat into the forests of Monte Rio, and take part in pagan ceremonies with ancient symbolic roots. How does that make sense? Could it be that, deep down, this is the real faith that binds them? An ancient faith wrapped in secrecy, where the sacred isn't God, it's power. It may sound like an exaggeration, but observe the elements, the isolated space, the absolute silence, the ritualistic performance, the same gestures repeated for decades. That's more than tradition. That's liturgy. And if there is no apparent God, perhaps it's because the worship isn't directed at a spiritual entity, but at an idea. The idea of dominance. The idea of belonging to a circle that answers to no one. Here's a theory few dare to discuss. The Grove doesn't transform anyone. It confirms those who are already ready. It's a seal, a modern rite of passage where you don't go to learn. You go to declare that you already know, that you're already in. And the price for that is never revealed, only paid. Many say the place is theatrical, symbolic, harmless. But the truth is that theater is never just performance. Theater is a way of transmitting messages. It always has been. Since ancient times, civilizations use theater to pass down myths, doctrines, warnings. And when men who move billions reenact the same story, year after year, before the same idol, aren't they also passing something down? Reaffirming a pact. Now think, why would this group stay active for over 100 years if it didn't serve a real purpose? Do you know any vacation club that spans generations of world leaders, bankers, and presidents? Something there is being kept alive. And if it's still alive, it's because it's still necessary for them. This club doesn't sell tickets. It doesn't open branches. It doesn't seek members. It selects, molds, preserves. And at that point, it's closer to a religion than to any ordinary network of influence. The only difference is that this religion is not in the hands of the people. It's in the hands of those who decide for them. In the end, what's most frightening isn't the fire, the robes, or the symbols. It's the silence. Because all of this happens before our very eyes, and yet no one talks about it. They don't need to hide, because they already know no one will listen. And maybe that's the most dangerous part. Whether Bohemian Grove is a cult or a new religion of the powerful is still hard to prove. But if you stop to think, what else is happening in other corners of the world with the same symbols, the same rituals, and the same silence? What begins as a gathering of influential figures ends up shrouded in ancient symbols, fire rituals, and a silence that spans generations. Bohemian Grove has never presented itself as a threat. It never needed to. It doesn't hide, it simply doesn't explain itself. And maybe it's precisely that absence of explanation that makes it so powerful. Because when those who rule the world meet without witnesses, the question that remains for those outside is no longer what is being done, but for whom it is being done. This story is just one piece, and one day, maybe you'll see the whole puzzle. If this made you think too, subscribe, like the video. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share. After all, more voices mean more discoveries.